Good afternoon. My name is Albert A. Michelson, and I'm a bit darker than I used to be, but you know how things change in the afterlife. So, what happened is me, my fellow compatriot, um, Edward Morley, we worked together to construct the Michelson-Morley experiment. So, that's who I am. So, what we were trying to do was, we were trying to, so in those days we believed in the luminiferous ether, there being some medium that light had to pass through within the atmosphere. So I was trying to, you know, I was trying to kind of detect ether in a way, but we wanted to show the effects of ether on the speed of light. So we wanted to show how ether changed maybe the speed of light, how it, shifted things around, because if light's going through it, has to, if it's an interference or there's a medium there, slow it down, speed it up, something like that, you know what I'm saying? So that's what we wanted to find. That's what we were looking for. We wanted to show those effects, with ether being, no one has really seen it, but it being such a great belief, that's what we went into our experiment thinking. Okay, we got this ether down, and now we know we got light, we know we got ether. Are we going to develop a device to go and show it through? So we did it at what is now Case Western Reserve University. Back in the day, it was two different universities, and this kind of smack dab in the middle, right there in the middle. So during the time, it was 1887. So a lot of different things going on in the world, but at the time of our experiments, others were trying to see what we were doing, and find out other things that were going on. Other scientists have their other things, a lot of world events. But thing is, so me, it was in, I believe, 85. Kind of hard remembering nowadays, being so long ago. But Edward Morley, that was the guy who I worked on my experiment with. It was us two together, two peas in a pod. He was with me through my nervous breakdown. We worked together hard. So he came to help after I failed my first attempt. And my first attempt, I created a device to kind of detect ether in a way. But, trying to detect the light and how, it moves through the medium, measure these things. But I had a failed attempt. My values were not 100% consistent with what was well known. And this isn't even necessarily involving ether, but my experiment, it failed. So I needed, something else to do. So moved on, met up with Edward Morley. We became good friends. He came to help with my first attempt. So what my role in our experiment, we kind of worked on it like two peas in a pod. Like, I was a physics professor, he was a chemist, he was a chemistry professor, so there was kind of that. But even with that, it wasn't, I was strictly physics and he was strictly chemistry type of thing. We really just kind of worked together. We kind of just filled our brains into each other. So I first developed that device, as I said, to determine the effects on light, but it didn't accomplish what I wanted to do. So that was in 81. Then a few years later, 85, I meet up with Morley, and then in 87 we really started to put this thing into motion. So it was about 87 that we really started to put it forth. But so during our experiment, after our experiment, it determined that what we measured was, we didn't measure any ether. We didn't see it. It wasn't there. We didn't find it in our measurements, and we saw that everything was consistent with what we measured. So a lot of people didn't believe what we were saying. They were saying, oh, ether must be real, so your values must be wrong, everything else must be wrong. So I already had my first failed experiment, and so now I'm coming back with this failed experiment. And so, I sent, these things to other scientific journals and let other people know. But at that time, we were being ridiculed because no one knew that ether was real. So, that ether was not real in our case. So, what after the experiment and what we tried to do, what we did was because it was very groundbreaking, all the other things that we did as far as creating my device and maintaining my device. But, being a failed, scientist, just gotta work and move on to the next thing. So we kind of continued with my experiment when it came to measuring light and doing other things and measuring light waves to that point. So light waves combining with one another, creating a bigger, peak, or light waves going against each other and kind of canceling that out. So we just developed my device a bit more. But after that, so what happened after that, after all of those things happened, it wasn't until Albert Einstein came along and proposed his theory of relativity. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, that's what he did. And his theory, it proposed that the speed of light is always the same. Always. Speed of light is always the same, no matter where it came from, where it's going, etc., etc. So that really went in mind with what we were saying. It just confirmed everything that our experiment said. So ether, we came to find out, is fake. Yes, fake. It's not a real thing. Sometimes it gets like that. It's not a real thing. It's life. But that's okay. It don't have to be real. We're wrong sometimes. And I'm so happy that this was confirmed while I was still alive, because it would have really sucked to have been alive and people, and die as a failed, someone thinking you failed at something. But turns out I was right, or not necessarily right, but my experiment was correct. My numbers were correct, and everyone else who had something else to say about it were wrong, but I was correct. So, hate to toot my own horn, but it's the way these things go in the 80s, the 1880s, and the early 1900s. But that's me. I really thank you guys for filming this, because my story needs to be out there. And I know my appearance has changed, but my thought process and maturation of mind has not. Thank you.